our first Zoom session on demystifying RollArt. And the topics tonight are going to be all about content sheets and result sheets. So just a few housekeeping things that I'll cover first before we hand it over to Pam and Phoenix. My name's Jenny and I'll be your host in the background. But what we would ask people to do is put your microphones on mute if you haven't already, just for any background noise, just in case you've got some busy activity in the background. It will really help with our concentration. Thank you. And also just to advise that this session is going to be recorded for a resource for future. And if you don't want to have your lovely photo on the Zoom session, you can actually choose to turn your camera off if you prefer that. Otherwise, this is just to advise that we will be recording the session. We really encourage during the session your questions. We welcome your questions. And so for just the matter of process, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please use the chat function. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat icon. If you press that, at any stage during the evening when you're listening to Pam or Phoenix, if you've got a question that you want to ask, anything that you want to clarify, please feel free to pop your queries in there and I'll monitor it as we go through the evening. And from time to time, we'll address those. If we don't get through all the questions tonight, because you're all going to just be so engaged and wanting to know lots, we would ask you to send your questions or any other suggestions on topics that you'd like covered for the future to the Artistic Secretary, so to Janine at Artistic Secretary, and that will help us sort of gauge what our future Zoom sessions are going to look like as we continue with the series. So for now, I think that's enough on the housekeeping front. I'm going to put my microphone on mute and hand it over to the lovely Pam Peters and Phoenix Reid. So over to you, Pam.
Awesome. Hey, look, thanks everybody for turning up. It's a great turnout for the first session. Tonight, we're just keeping it real simple and looking at some of the background stuff for RollArt. And one of the driving things behind these sessions has been things that we've all heard at events that have made us realize that not everybody understands as well as we would like all aspects of our new judging system. And it's been quite a roller coaster ride getting it in place, particularly with COVID affecting competitions and things over the last couple of years as well. So the first thing I'm going to cover off tonight is the panel structure. You will have all seen us on the other side of the rink and we're all lined up at the desk. And I don't know that everybody knows quite what roles we have over there. We still have judges. I've heard some people think that we don't have judges anymore, but we very much do. And they're an incredibly important part of the result process. If you think about the way to look at it is the judges look at the quality and the artistry. So that side of the panel is looking at how well you do things, the creativity with which you do it, things like floor coverage, difficulty of the types of steps you're using. Are you telling a story? They're really assessing the quality of what you're doing. On the other side of the panel, and I'm not using left and right because they can flip. Internationally, often it's a reverse to what we do in New Zealand, but there's no right or wrong way, which way to have the panel. So, but always on one end, you'll have the judges, and on the other end, you'll have the technical panel. Now, the technical panel are looking at the difficulty side of things. We're looking at the what you did, how difficult was it, depending on the thing that you're doing, it might have a level awarded to it, for example, footwork or things like that. If it's a free skater, we're looking at, did you get the jump all the way around? Did you do which spins did you do? Did you do any difficult variations? All of that side of things. In the middle, we've got two very important roles. The first one is the data operator, and that's the person who's coordinating the entering of things into the system, the printing of results, the setting up of the events. And they often, if you're looking at the panel, they'll have their head down. They won't be looking up at the skating rink, and that's actually okay. They need to be looking at the computer and making sure that what's going in is correct. And finally, and definitely not least, we have your referee. Like all events we've had in the past, the referee is looking after the skater welfare. They're ensuring that rules are being adhered to, and they're responsible for the overall running of the event, things like making sure you get your proper warm-ups and things like that. The referee is also the person you go to if you have a problem on the floor during your program. So if anything ever goes wrong and you're standing there and you just don't know what to do, go over to the table and we'll point you in the direction of the referee. Whatever you do, don't leave the floor. Okay, but those are the main positions roles that we have operating in the RollArt. Off in the background, we also have an event manager, and they coordinate the entire championships. So they are looking after making sure that everything's set up and that we're all in where we need to be. But your key personnel to remember are you've got your judges, you've got the tech panel, you've got the data operator, and you've got the referee, who often, in cases of small events here in New Zealand, is also judging at the same time. So they've got a really busy day. So, but yeah. The next thing we wanted to cover off was content sheets, because content sheets are really important with what we're doing. A lot of people are sort of going, why do we need to fill them in? And the reason you need to fill them in is to help us find what you're trying to do and to make sure that we see everything you want us to see at the right time. So I'm going to hand it over to Phoenix in a minute to tell you a little bit about how to fill them in. But what I'd like everybody to take away from tonight with content sheets is that if they're not filled in correctly, we can't go looking for things. So if it's a mandatory item that you have to do and it's in the wrong place on your content sheet and we don't recognize where you've actually done it, we can't use the video review to go back and have a look. So it's really important that we get the content sheets right. Phoenix, you ready to go?
Yep, I'm all good. Right, okay. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. If I can find the right one. Can you all see that? Yep. We're good. Sweet. All right. So this is the World Skate website. If you go into on the artistic section, into about, regulations, and then down to forms, this is where you find your content sheets. It's set up really nicely so that you can fill them all out online and you can download them and they will just be saved to your computer and you can easily print them or email them where they need to go. So these two are exactly the same. I'm not sure why they have it up twice, but if you click on here, and it looks a little bit different to how it did 6 months ago, so don't worry about that. It's the same principle. The current website just lays it out a lot easier. So you come in and you choose what routine you're doing. They used to have one sheet for short and long and one sheet for style and free dance, but now it's all separate. So say I'm going to do a short program, I can go into there and it guides you through exactly what to do. So this is just an exemplar here. It's got the item that you're doing, the time that it starts. And down here, you've got all of your codes. So you can refer back to it as you're filling it out. So we'll pop in the name, category, and then for us, if you're just doing a local, like a domestic competition within New Zealand, you'd be able to select club and you can just put whatever club you're part of. If it's going to international, correct me if I'm wrong, Pam, you'd do federation and choose Skate New Zealand, I think. And And then choreography, you put what your music is. Then the important part, the element time. This starts from the first movement of the skater, and it says up here is the first line. So it's not where, if you're using the time of the track on the music that's playing, that's not going to be completely accurate, because you'll have your sort of 5-second ding at the start where the skater's not actually moving. So you need some kind of stopwatch. You start the stopwatch from the very first movement. This is also something to be mindful of. If skaters, if you're standing in your pose, you need to make sure that you're staying still until it's time for you to move, just to make sure that it's very clear that you haven't started yet. So if my first element is a jump, I can select solo jump. And then free skating elements, you don't need to put the time that you do it. Is that still correct, Pam?
With the exception of footwork and choreographic sequences.
Yeah.
Those
So
you definitely do.
jumps and spins, you don't need to pop a time. But if my footwork sequence was next, I can click that one there and say it's 30 seconds into after my first movement, I pop that time there. And then next element could be combo spin, and it's really important that you get your combo spin and your solo spin around the right way, so that if you fall at the start of your combo spin, they know that that was the intention of the element that you were trying to do. Combo jump, we have a solo spin, and then if this was a long program, we'll pretend that's the long program sheet, you'd also have a choreo step sequence, and that's another one where you need to put a time in. So I might be doing that at 2 minutes and 47 seconds, starting my choreo sequence. So it's only jumps and spins that you don't have to pop anything in. From there, you can download your sheet as a PDF and go from there. This notes section on the side, in the example, they've put the time of the footwork sequence, so it's going for 33 seconds. That is important mostly if you're not using the full time of your allowance. So most footwork sequences, you're allowed 30 seconds or 40 seconds, depending on the grade. If you know that the footwork sequence only runs for 22 seconds, and then the skater is going to go into another element pretty soon after, it's very important that you let the tech panel know, so that they know when the footwork sequence is finishing and to get ready to judge the next element. Otherwise, it can take them by surprise and be difficult to judge. I'll see, oh, I can't click up there. We'll have a quick look at the dance one. It'll look the same for the most part. Dance elements, you need to put the time for every single element. So we've got footwork sequence, artistic sequences, travelings, cluster, choreo, pattern sequence. It will say in the regulations which of these you're required to have in your routine. You don't need to have all of them. If it specifies you only have footwork, art, sequence, travel, and choreo, that's the only 4 that you need to put in. For these, especially for younger skaters, it's helpful to have kind of an indicator of the start of a sequence. So in a competition environment, I could have a footwork sequence that the skater usually starts at 15 seconds, but because they're nervous, they've rushed through their opening and they're actually about to start it at 7 seconds. The tech panel's not going to know that that's when they're supposed to start judging the sequence. But if I was to put in that they do a stag jump at the beginning, or some kind of indicator there that will let the tech panel know, okay, they're running early, this is the footwork sequence, then it's going to be really helpful for them and will make sure that all the right turns will be getting judged. Cool. Is there anything else, Pam?
The only other thing that I would put in there or just mention is that it's really important to only put in the stuff that we need to know about. I've had a couple of ones come in front of us recently where every transitional piece of footwork was put in as a choreo sequence. So we actually counted 6 choreo sequences listed on the program sheet. Things like that. If you're doing a LUTS, for example, in free skating, use the notes section to tell us that you're intending to do a LUTS so that we assess that one correctly. But yeah, use the notes section to give us important information. It can be really helpful. I particularly like the idea with young skaters of giving us whatever the first thing in a footwork sequence is. The other thing for dance skaters is be very, very careful that you pick the right type of footwork sequence. For example, Masters style dance this year is an artistic sequence from memory, and we're consistently being told people are doing a footwork sequence. Domestically in New Zealand, we're choosing to use our discretion, and we know it's going to be an artistic sequence. But if they did that at a competition offshore, chances are that would be assessed as the wrong element, and if they may very well not get anything for that footwork sequence, and then also get a missing element penalty for not doing an artistic sequence. So it's very important that you're very clear and pick the right things for what you're wanting us to look at.
Just got a question here from Bruce. When saving, can you save just the sheet required? Because quite often he gets 3 pages when maybe only 2 or 3 required.
Yeah, that's where that new setup on the WorldScape website is brilliant, because you're only doing 1 program per PDF. If you're using an older sheet that you have, please keep them separate, and please clearly label them with the skater name and the grade, etc. There's some information there on the correct way to label them. But if you get that wrong, also we can end up with the wrong sheet for the wrong program.
You also have to make sure that the name on the content sheet matches exactly the name that has been entered in the competition, especially for offshore competitions. We've had that reiterated a few times. So if you have multiple middle names and sometimes you put 2 of your names down and sometimes you only put 1, or if you're entered as Robert but your content sheet says Bobby, that's not going to bode well in the system. So make sure that everything's correct and consistent.
You run the risk of people losing it or not knowing what to do with it.
Yeah.
So, cool. Anything else with that one? Okay. The last thing we wanted to cover off quickly tonight is result sheets, because again, it's an area where we're not sure that people understand how to read them correctly, and I could spend ages on them. But what I thought I'd do is just take the sheet I'm about to show you is from the recent WorldScape competition in Trieste, and it's a really good sheet because it shows you the effect of QOEs, and because they have 5 judges, you can actually see the averaging in play as well on the scores. So just bear with me while I okay. So hopefully everybody can see the sheet. Now this is a young free skater. It's minis. The first thing you'll see at the top is the event, then the location and the date, and then the grade. Now, working down the sheet from the top, you'll see that I've circled where it says revised. Now, this will happen occasionally where the referee has picked up on something that needs to be corrected. And so the data operator with the referee has gone and corrected a mistake that was that they've spotted. And when that happens, you'll see revised at the top. This young skater is Frederica Chiampi, and in Europe, they often put surname before Christian name. In New Zealand, we tend to do Christian name first, surname second. Across the top here, you've got the element score, the component score, and the resulting final score. If you have a look down here down on this left-hand side, you've got all the codes of all the elements. And these are as you will find them in the rule book. Now, if you might hear your coach or someone call something by a slightly different name, that's okay. Many of us who've been in skating for a while still call a thorin a eula. The other favorite one that I still get wrong is a toe loop and a mapes. We used to know them as a mapes, which was an American term, but they're correctly now known as a toe loop. So what you've got down here is the code and then the name. And then you've also got whether it was a solo jump or a combo jump, combo spin. So you can see very clearly what the tech panel thought you were doing. This first column of numbers is the base value. So if you do the item correctly and of average quality, that's the value you're going to get for that item. Down here beside some of them, you'll notice some percentage marks and some plus marks. That's because this young lady has done some bonus items. So in the case of this element here, I would assume that there's a sit between camels bonus being awarded. On this upright, chances are you've got a difficult variation because there's a plus, as well as it getting some of the bonus from the sit between camels. So what you'll see when you get over to the next column is this is the QOE. So this is, when we talk about QOE, we're talking about the quality that the element was awarded. And this is where the judges become very, very important. You'll see over here, all 5 judges say, for example, in the case of the Lutz at the top, even though it was a single Lutz, she must have done a great job of it because she's got +1s and a +2, which means she's got an increase on her score of 0.1 added to the 0.9 to give a final score of a 1 over on the right-hand side. And that QOE, a lot of times, for example, I've heard people say, oh, 0 means she got nothing. That's not correct. 0 means it's adequate, it's average, it's good, it's not great, but it's not bad either. So 0 here is actually okay. It means it's okay, quite literally. This young skater here has done very well in terms of most of her elements. Occasionally here we've got a minus. In this case, what you'll notice is that we've got, actually, if we go to the combo spin, we've got a variation from a -1, some +1s, and a +2. Now, with the QOEs and with the components down the bottom, the other thing you might notice occasionally is we do an average. So in this instance, the top QOE will be taken off and the bottom one, and the remaining 3 will be averaged. And what that does is it means that you get the fairest possible assessment of an item. So if you have a look here, her base score was 31.95, but because of all the positive QOEs she got, it lifted her score up to 35.28 for the technical elements. Next section is the program components, and that's our old B mark, the artistry mark. So we've got skating skills, skating skills, transitions, performance, and choreography and composition. And again, we average those. So in this instance, if you take the top line, for example, you've got a 5.5 and a 4.75. Those two will be crossed out. And so the average component for skating skills was a 5. And those component skills add together to get the B mark for the event. The other thing that you'll see here is factoring. And what that means is, depending on the program, the components might be given a little bit more weight or a little bit less weight to ensure that the overall score is balanced, which kind of looks a little weird with a young lady who's got 35 in the technical score. That's pretty unusual for minis. That's pretty unusual. But it was what I liked about this one is it showed you very clearly the effect of the component score. The other thing you can tell from looking at these numbers is that this young lady's pretty standard across all her components. Her very best component was her performance, and her worst component was her transitions, but she's pretty steady. Now, it's not unusual to see on occasion that a skater, particularly a new skater, might get quite low performance skills, but because they're getting quite good at the content that they can do, their skating skills might be a little higher. And that's good, because it means we can reward what is good and give feedback on what needs to be worked on. Down the bottom here is a few extra helping bits of information to tell you what some of these things. Now, this young lady, all her jumps were clean. There were no unders or halves or downgrades. And it tells you that there was a bonus on a jump or spin. That's what the percentage means. Just as a way to compare it, I'm just going to scoot down to the skater who was 30th in this event. And you will see quite a few differences here. You'll see quite a few minuses in the QOEs. Not always. It's quite okay for skaters to have things that they're good at and things that they're not so good at. You'll see here we've got a downgrade, we've got a half, we've got an under. And when you look at her technical score, because she's got minus QOEs, it's actually brought the technical base score down even further. The other thing to note is if something has a star beside it, it's been completely disallowed for some reason. And looking at this skater, it's because she's done 3 combo jumps and she's only allowed to do 2. So this last combo, unfortunately, is starred out. If you go down here, we'll see she must have had a fall, because it's told us she's got a deduction of -1, and it's because of a fall.
Pam?
Yes.
Yeah, just another question from the Zoom. Can you please clarify element not allowed?
Okay, so element not allowed is a good one for free skating. Is in these younger grades, they may not be allowed to do a inverted camel, for example. If they do an inverted camel, it will be not allowed. It might say in the example we just looked at that in that grade you can only do 2 combination jumps and the person's done 3. It might be that you can only do 12 jumps and they've done 14. So an element not allowed is something that you're not allowed to do that has been done. Actually, sorry, the excess jumps is not a good example, because you can do more, they just won't get counted. But an element not allowed is something that you shouldn't do. So particularly in free skating, it'll be a camel, might be that they've attempted a triple in a grade that can only have up to doubles. Things like that. That's why it's really important to read what you're allowed to do in the rules. Does that help? Just a quick pop down to dance. Everything else is very similar, but some of the key things to note for a pattern sequence or compulsory dances, you'll now be told which key points were awarded. So in this case, this young skater got key point 2 and key point 3 awarded for her Keats Foxtrot, so she got a level 2. But yeah, that's how the result sheet works. We can do another much more detailed session in the future if people would like, but that's a good introduction to those. And that, believe it or not, is probably 30 minutes.
It is.
Yep, bang on.
So yeah, that's a whistle-stop introduction to some of the basic starting points. Next week's session.
Recording in progress.
Next week's session is intended to be on performance, because it's probably the one component that everybody can make some changes and improvements on between now and Nationals. We're very aware that Nationals is coming up. We don't want to give you stuff that will be difficult to implement between now and Nationals. We want to give you helpful stuff, and we figured that performance is something that all skaters can take, it's something that they really can influence for themselves. So we're going to have a really good look at the performance component and a little bit of components in general next week.